You're watching Sitka Community TV. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like what you see.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Wow, that worked great. Yes, we still haven't figured out the
Hi, everyone.
We can mute up.
Nice to see you, Bonnie.
That we can't talk.
Good to see you.
And Jess, is it Gutzweiler?
Gutzweiler.
Gutzweiler, sounds German.
Yeah, I feel like I should maybe have a, like a Riesling and brat food truck or something, because my maiden name was Hinker.
Bring it
So
to
I
Rotary.
did Gutzweiler, I'd really be a doozy.
That would be.
We met with Tamara and
And are you our presenter today?
I am, yeah. I'm with Shelter Box, and I'm a Soldotna Rotarian.
Have you ever been to Sitka before?
I was down there for Michelle's conference in 2017. That was the year I was president, when I was a member of Anchorage South. I loved it. I would like to have another reason to return. My husband does work down there occasionally, but I seem not to get right out of those.
Are you at the same place or?
What kind of work does he do?
He does laboratory sales for the hospitals across the
And then
state.
like they know when we want
Public school in Monmouth,
Well,
it's really small, so.
You're gonna have to trick him into it.
I know. I heard somebody ask about the snow, maybe that was you, Dave. I'm in Anchorage this week for work, and today I'm actually out in the valley. And it snowed, I think, like 8 inches in Anchorage on Monday. It was awful. I'm so over it.
Like there's a.
Wow.
So I saw that as a headline, doesn't mean it's surpassed all other years.
Sure, where they are and all that. Oh, I live in a
Yeah.
Are you guys ready to get
Yeah, I
started?
would be surprised. I would be surprised if a lot.
Okay,
The moose was.
we don't have a bell today, so I'm trying to talk over everybody else and have everybody please be
Yeah, what's
quiet.
Sharon doing?
Trying to call a meeting to order.
You guys all stop talking.
We're talking in the room?
I was talking to the room and now I'm talking to everybody. We'll be starting our meeting now.
Thank
Okay,
you, Sharon.
thanks you guys. I'll figure this chat thing out. I forgot how to do it, but next time I'll have it down. Anyway, if everybody would like to please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. All right, then let me see. Our speaker is a visiting Rotarian. We'll introduce her later. And I do not see any guests of Rotarians. So do we have any Rotary announcements? Dan Jones.
We've been talking about it among ourselves here, but we were mumbling, so for the people on the internet, our annual trip to Goddard for our workday is May 21st. That's a Sunday. That's so that Jay Pearson can be in charge and not miss his radio show, because I saw Rockin' Robbie did it yesterday, and I think you could use him, but you do a good job on Saturday. So hopefully Denny will be with us. We have a Allen Marine 46-seat boat. Lord help us if we fill it. I don't know what we do with everybody, but nonetheless, plenty of room. Rotarians, Rotary guests, and Rotary family. And Sarah tells me that we will have 7 of the AmeriCorps, of the 8 AmeriCorps, who will be there to be our shall we say, slave labor? Is that fair? Well, the young working folks, how's that? So, starting next week, I'll have a sign-up sheet here. I'm looking for a quartermaster. Now, everybody would have their own definition of quartermaster, but in my case, it's the person who arranges for the food and gets it laid out at lunchtime. So if you want to be the quartermaster, I can see somebody back in the corner, we might appoint them. But anyhow, no, I'll have a sign-up sheet next week. It'll be here for a while, and I'll give you updates on how it's coming, and also probably give you some listing of what we're going to do. So looking forward to May 21st, Sunday. Be lovely, lovely weather. We're going to go down to Goddard, leaving Crescent Harbor at 8:30, back at 4:30. So you don't have to give up your whole life in order to go down and work at Goddard. Thank you.
Any other Rotary announcements? John, you have an announcement.
All is well in Duckland. We had a great weekend and sold a bunch more tickets, but more importantly, many of you who took books actually sold them. I spent yesterday and today collecting them, and Dan Jones just dropped off another one, and Jessica Cabico, who used to work for Wells Fargo, has got a couple of books for us I have to pick up. So things are really good. Our magic number at this nanosecond is 1,610 tickets to sell, and we are done. We can make a good inroad in that this Saturday. Vince Winter, our GM over at AC Lakeside, has set up another lunch for the duck race, and it runs from 11:30 to 3 o'clock, or they run out of food. You can get a flank steak, a hamburger, cheeseburger, a pair of hot dogs, or a plant substitute plate.
It's a flank steak sandwich.
Yes, thank you.
Substitute.
And the cost of lunch is the purchase of one duck race ticket at that event. Last year we cleared 309 tickets, which is amazing. So we want to try and do that again. There are copies of the posting on Sitka Duck Race, Sitka Rotary Club, and AC Lakeside sent a bunch out. So far mine's got out to a little over 125 people, but if you can all share them, that would be helpful. It's all about the numbers for this thing. The more we get, the more tickets we don't have to sell in the weeks to come. So with your efforts, we will have another great event, thanks to Vince and the Bird Ends. That's the name of his crew that does all the cooking nowadays. So we appreciate Vince and all that. Thank all of you for the work you're doing, and we're going to get this thing to a successful conclusion in record time once again. 6 straight sellouts. Thanks.
So I have one clarification.
Yeah.
The plant replacement, does that mean replacing the plants with meat? Pure meat. Or the other way around?
It's non-meat.
Oh, okay, all right, just double check.
So there will be a vegetarian option of some sort for those who do not want to eat meat products. Okay, so let me see if that's it. Sarah.
I do have an announcement. The reason that Sitka AmeriCorps is able to go to the cleanup at Goddard is because of a generous donation from Rotary Club. So I am here to thank everybody, and the AmeriCorps members will certainly appreciate spending the night at Goddard and getting to have a hot tub and then being slave labor. So thanks, Rotary.
Okay, is that it? Online? There's Carrie?
I'm willing to do, as I did last year, a sign-up genius for those, that trip, the boat trip, which is, an online way to sign up for things. And if anybody doesn't want to go into Sign Up Genius, they can just email me and I would sign them up on Sign Up Genius. But it's if that would be helpful, I would do it.
Dan will call you. And so you guys could do that. Thank you very much. Jeff?
You calling me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Hey, just a reminder too, for those that are interested in trivia, the pub quiz will be the 20th. We're still looking for teams of 1 to 3. Let Ms. Sagel or myself know. And there are prizes, and it goes to support the public library and the Friends of the Library. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and just a reminder for anybody who is interested, we are having a board meeting Monday night via Zoom, the same Zoom link that we do our lunch meetings. It's at 5:30 this Monday coming up, the 17th. If anyone wants to join us, you're welcome. If you want something on the agenda that we can just deal with on our own, you can email that to me. If it's something you need to promote or talk about, then you should probably Zoom in. So if you need more information, you can go ahead and email me or call me. And you should have that information. And if you don't, you should be able to get onto our website and find it. And if you still don't, then it's not that important for you to be there, apparently. So, anyways, so another announcement real quickly, just another reminder that when we change over boards for next year, July 1st, we're still looking for a president-elect, a foundation chairperson, and a PR person. If you have questions about what those that would entail, just get a hold of me and or any other board member. They should be able to tell you, or you could go online and it should be able to tell you what those positions basically do. And then ask us, because they might not actually be what those online positions tell you to do for our club, because all clubs are done differently. So anyway, so if we have nothing else, I would like to invite our program coordinator for the month, Carrie Sagel, to introduce our speaker.
Okay, Jess Gutzweiler grew up on a registered Angus beef farm in eastern South Dakota. When the opportunity to move to Alaska in 2007 presented itself, Jess was all on board. Shortly after arriving in Alaska, Jess met her husband Aaron. They've embraced the Alaskan lifestyle of adventuring in the greater outdoors, hunting, fishing, cross-country skiing, hiking, as well as traveling to warm destinations in the winter. She and Aaron also have an extremely adorable and spoiled micro mini pig named Spank. Professional Jess works for Advanced Oncology Associates as their practice representative. She joined Rotary in 2011. She was a member of the Anchorage South Club for 10 years and served as their president in 2016-2017. She was a training leader at PNW Pets from 2017 to 2020 and took on the AG role for the Kenai Peninsula Kodiak area in 2021. She's currently a member of the Soldotna Rotary Club. She came on board as the Shelter Box Ambassador for District 5010. Please welcome Jess.
Thank you. This is obviously one of the highlights of Zoom, is that I'm able to visit Sitka remotely, so this is awesome. They were asking in our little breakout and the Zoomers, so I'll call us, if I'd ever been to Sitka, and yes, that was the year I was president. Michelle hosted her district conference there, and I had a lovely time. A lot of great memories from that, so thank you for being such generous hosts. I am going to share my screen. Hopefully it doesn't have a problem with that. And there we go. Okay, and so if you guys want, you can unmute and ask questions throughout this, but first off, I just wanted to say thank you. You guys, the Sitka Club has been longtime supporters of Shelter Box, and most recently, you guys have made the silver level. You're the only club in the district that's at the silver level, so give yourselves a round of applause and pat on the back. Last year, as Carrie mentioned in that presentation, we had a very specific fundraiser. So I'll show you guys here. First of all, this is your silver level hero award. I just got this today, so congratulations for your generous gift this year and all the fundraising and extra things you guys do to support Shelter Box. But as she mentioned, I have this really unique pet called a micro mini pig, and that is my little Spank. She was at the Talkeetna District Conference last year, and past District Governor Cheryl gave her a kiss on the snout, and we raised over $45,000, a new record for our district. And kind of a unique thing, I had to think outside the box when COVID hit. For a long time, our district really relied on our youth exchange members to do fundraising for Shelter Box, and we have since changed that, and I'm really leaning on the clubs now. My goal is still that we have 100% participation, even if it's a club that can only give $100. We've got some work to do in District 5010, but As you guys probably heard during your district visit from Mike Ferris this year, the district governor, that shelter box is still a priority to him, and I'm gonna give you a little overview of what shelter box is, but also do a 2022 year in review. So just Rotary and shelter box are pretty close. Actually, we are the project partner with Rotary, and it started back in 2000. The RI president said, "Hey, Rotary, I want you guys to come up with a millennial project, so a project that you guys can carry on." And so this club in the UK came up with a project. They noticed that with natural disasters hitting, there was a lot of response for food or clothing, but not a lot of response for shelter. So they come up with the idea of shelter, and here we are 23 years later, and we continue to maneuver the world of disaster, but also war-torn countries, and I'll get to that. For all my marketing people out there and people that are really in tune to that, we are the official project partner with Rotary International, and I think that's an important thing to highlight because we can co-brand without really being turned into the Rotary fleet. So you'll see here on this picture, this is in the Philippines after a natural disaster. Philippines is the one country we've deployed to more than 30 times, that you can see our shelter box tent there with the co-branded logos. Just a quick note as well, because you guys are generous supporters of shelter box, every year when you give to shelter box, in the presidential citation, that marks as an international project. So if you don't have a specific international project that you're working on or partnered with, giving to shelter box counts as that. So just something to keep in mind. So kind of going back to the nuts and bolts of what shelter box is, we started as a disaster relief nonprofit and have pivoted to see that what we give out and what we can do also works in war-torn countries. So you can see here our original kit is in the lower left-hand corner. That's what the shelter box looks like. I did have one in Talkeetna last year. If you guys did head up to Talkeetna and see that. In 2014, we added the shelter kit, and that's up in the right above it. And that allows people to remain in their home site, to secure their possessions and repair what's theirs, but also it gives them tools to get back out in the field. A lot of the individuals we help do a lot of day labor or are working in the field, so it really helps them get back. In 2000, we've upgraded our purification kit. We've actually updated it twice, and you see there the green box, that's kind of our signature green box. When we are giving out the shelter box, all of those items surrounding that in that big tent fit in there, and that's over 100 pounds. So those are pretty weighted, but you can see all the items that we've branded. Our solar kit down in the bottom, that has, when it's charged properly, it can have up to 16 hours of light, and it also has a USB charger on the top, which I think is pretty cool. We also have a standard relief kit, which it does not have our logos on the outside. That's really what we use in a lot of our war-torn countries. We found that if we do have a logoed item of Western things, that there seems to be a lot more violence towards those families that are in them. So we do have a specific UN tent that is not branded at all. I don't have that shown here. It's much bigger. It's probably what, if we have any hunters in the room, what you would use as a wall tent when you go out hunting. So in my intro, as Carrie mentioned, I'm an ambassador for Shelter Box. I'm a volunteer, just like you guys. I'm a passionate Rotarian, and I was approached to take over when Nancy Dodge, who is an E-member, she stepped down as the Shelter Box ambassador for District 5010, and I was very happy to take on that role. My overall goal with Shelter Box is to become a response team member, and you see this gal here on this page. They're the people that go out when the disaster strikes, really work on the logistics and the placements of those shelters. They aren't just setting up tents in a country. They really work through a train the trainer program. It's a pretty extensive training, and you have to give up 6 months, up to 6 weeks of your time to go train and deploy. So I have to wait a little bit more when I have more flexibility in my employment to do that, but a really, I think, satisfying thing, and sings to that service above self heart that we all have. A question I get a lot when I am presenting is, how do you decide to deploy, and why aren't we deploying more in the United States? So I put this slide on here. It might be a little small for you in the room, or even some of you Zoomers in there, but our big thing is that the government has to ask for international assistance. And that happens very rarely in the United States. We have a lot of things like FEMA and insurance and a lot of different areas to support citizens of the United States. So it's very rare that our government asks for international assistance. The second thing is we need to make sure we're helping at least 200 families that they'll be able to benefit from our help. Is our aid appropriate? Do people need shelter? Will they require it 1 month after the disaster hits? Can they recover themselves? Is there local capacity or other organizations to support us? That's where Rotary comes in big time when we partner with local organizations. Do we have the resources needed to respond in a timely fashion? Is it safe? So we didn't deploy throughout much of the pandemic because we didn't feel it was safe to send our response team members out. And then how quickly and efficiently can we respond? And do the vulnerabilities of the families fall within our SPEAR definitions? So just a quick overview of why we decided to deploy. Here you can see on the map, this is where our shelter boxes are stationed, so basically where they're sent from. And if we do have a disaster in the United States, they typically come from Panama, so number 5 on there. You can see number 6 is located in the Philippines. As I mentioned before, we have deployed there over 30 times. So we do have a shelter box office in the Philippines. We actually have, shelter box is unique. So we have Shelter Box USA. When you guys give your gifts and your donations, it comes to Shelter Box USA. That's so you can get a 501c3 tax write-off. And with that, we have Shelter Box Canada, Shelter Box Australia, Shelter Box UK. They all have their different arms of giving. But when we deploy, it's Shelter Box that's deploying. It's not Shelter Box USA or Shelter Box UK. So when we deploy, we might have maybe somebody come from the United States, and then we might have them pair up with somebody from Australia and somebody from Great Britain, and they go and deploy together. So that's just kind of the two-headed monster of Shelter Box I like to really inform people about. I got this information, this was updated this week on our current deployments and where we are in the world. And I'm going to give you a 2022 year in review, but I was on a Shelter Box call yesterday from a member that was deployed in Turkey, and he got back and kind of just shared some of his things, and he's deployed over 19 times. He lives on the East Coast, and he's been a response team member since 2009, and he said that Haiti, when he deployed to Haiti, that was probably the worst deployment he's been on in terms of the severity, and he said Turkey is a close second. They're seeing communities of maybe 125 people now down to 59 people. And you'll learn here that Shelter Box really goes out to the most vulnerable and serves the communities that aren't receiving any aid. So I always refer back to like the 1964 earthquake, the Good Friday earthquake we had here in Anchorage, and how a lot of people were coming directly to Anchorage and deploying aid or helping. Well, we would look out to like the Sutton area or Talkeetna or maybe even Big Lake to help people and not go to the center of the attention. That's not where Shelter Box, that's not our bread and butter. Our bread and butter is deploying to those outlying areas, those far-reached areas, and we'll learn more about that. One thing I love about Shelter Box is we just don't deploy aid. After disasters and in conflict zones around the globe, families tell us what makes the biggest difference in their lives. We listen to everything that they give us feedback on, and it helps us then improve how we deploy in future events. So maybe we hear from these individuals that they could have used more water purifications, or they didn't need this or that. Well, that helps us to improve on the next deployment we go out. So some of our response team members, they do a lot of these kind of circle backs on the 3, 6 month, 9 month, a year out. They come back to those individuals, and maybe they're not going on the first deployment when the natural disaster hit. So this picture was taken in 2020 in the Philippines. You can see there in the background they used the shelter kits, so the tarp and the nails. They repaired their home instead of actually getting a tent. So as I mentioned, we learned from each deployment. I like including this picture. This is my friend Ned down in Walla Walla. I met him at the Spokane District Conference when I was representing Shelter Box, and Ned's been on deployment multiple times. In his real life, he's a small AA, so he has a little flexibility in his schedule. But he said his favorite thing is to go back and listen and see how we can improve. And as someone who's worked in the nonprofit industry before, sometimes it's hard to get larger nonprofits to steer their ship a different direction. But Shelterbox is very in tune to that and very aware that if we are going to improve and be the best stewards of our donor dollars, we need to listen to our recipients that are receiving our aid and making sure we're doing the best possible. I think these next slides really sing true to Alaskans, especially being in Sitka as remote as you all are, of how we get aid out. So for here, this was a picture taken in 2004. It's really a photo that put Shelterbox on the map. We delivered 24,000 aid kits when the cyclone hit Indonesia in 2004, and as I mentioned, put us on the map of someone that's in the disaster relief arena. But we really think outside the box of how we can get aid out. So maybe for Alaskans, this would be somebody's, let's say somebody's singer, and we asked them to go help us because a Rotarian in Sitka knew them and knew that they would help us get aid out. Or maybe we're having somebody take them on their snow machines, and a group of Rotarians get together and take them out on snow machines, or local government help us receive aid, or here maybe somebody's Super Cub is helping us drop aid, or even a helicopter. That's not out of line for Alaska. Here maybe this would be a dog up in Nome, we're getting aid out. Or just thinking outside the box on how Alaskans, we are, I think we know how to get things in rural areas. Well, so do these individuals that are receiving our aid and taking it to the places that they need it the most. As I mentioned, Shelterbox started as a disaster relief nonprofit, but we found that the aid that we deliver can also be used, and what we do can also be beneficial to those in war-torn countries. And we've learned to apply our knowledge to help refugees around the globe. This picture is from 2019 in Syria. So this is from 2020. I know this is obviously a little dated, but we've responded to more than 300 disasters in over 100 countries in our 23 years. And we've been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, and that's from the work that we've done in war-torn countries in 2018 and 2019. And we help get people back to work. So not only are the aid that we supply, is it helping people get back to the normalcy of their lives, but they own those items when they're given. And that's a big thing that the ambassadors and the response team members work on when we're delivering aid, is that we're making sure that in these countries where maybe women aren't able to own their home, that they're working through the local government, that shelter kit will not be taken away, and they own it, they have the deed. So we really work through local government to make sure that is understood. And here in this case, you can see in Cameroon, she has turned her shelter kit into her sewing area. So it's letting her get back to work. And as I mentioned before in those pictures where there was a shovel and a hoe, that maybe people are going out and working in the field. Well, here Esther's using hers to get back to the sewing that she can make money for her family. Of course, through COVID-19, we had to adjust and overcame obstacles and the challenges that were presented with the travel restrictions that we found in our in-country partners. They had to really assess and step in. So as I mentioned on that why we deploy, we really need to make sure that there's partners there to help us along the way. So we really relied heavily on those partners through COVID. We did not deploy any response team members at that time because we didn't want to do any harm. We did add soap and water basins to our deployment and other proper hygiene aid that would help. Some local partners were equipped with PPE for their safety and for those that they helped shelter. So here, I think as Americans, we take for granted fresh water and our ability to get our hands on soap or hand sanitizer. Here you can see that this young gal in Syria was taking advantage of the soap and the water that was given to her through the aid distribution. So this is the overview of the countries that we served in 2022, to give you a quick overview of what we did in 2022. First stop is the Philippines, and as I mentioned, we've been there over 30 times. In December of 2021, Super Typhoon Rai, locally known as Odette, made landfall 9 times across 7 provinces in the Philippines over a course of 2 days. The storm affected an estimated 12 million people. 3.9 were displaced by June of 2022. How we helped? You can see there that we provided 20,000 families with shelter kits, tarps, solar lights, tools, and corrugated iron to help rebuild their homes. Next up is Yemen. The conflict there, and this is a war-torn country, the conflict there has created a catastrophic humanitarian needs with 23.4 million, almost 3/4 of the population, estimated to require humanitarian assistance in 2022. We're working on our next phase to support people there, again with a local partner. You can see these bagged items. Some of the key items we're handing out are floor mats, high thermal blankets, fire extinguishers, tarps, ropes, iron nets, and mattresses. In February, we marked our 1-year anniversary of being in Ukraine. The conflict there is destroying and damaging mass destruction. As we all know, we're very familiar with what's happening in Ukraine. A lot of media attention on it. We're on Project 3, so we've done a lot in Ukraine with, and it was the first time Shelterbox actually allowed people to earmark and give to a specific disaster. And we saw a large number of increased donations through that, because I feel like people just were brokenhearted about what was happening to Ukrainians. And this is, in addition, in one of the very few times Shelterbox is actually giving out cash assistance. We typically don't do that. We usually give out aid, but we found that cash assistance helped distribute hygiene kits for individuals that were going across borders to Moldova. And those had toothbrushes, soap, sanitary products, diapers. Each portable kit was designed to last an individual week so they could go to safety. The cash assistance went to over 4,000 families and to get across the Moldovan border, and it was $120 was transferred to their bank accounts. Next up is Pakistan. Pakistan had a torrential downfall of rain and impacted a record number of people. The monsoon rains hit earlier and heavier than usual, causing flooding in 1/3 of the entire country. Rainfall was almost 3 times higher than a 30-year national average, with many other countries and regions in the country experiencing 5 times the natural rain, the normal rain. Here you can see the Shelterbox tents lined up there with their goats. We helped up to 5,000 households with winterized aid and again providing cash assistance. Burkina Faso is another country that's going through some violent extremism. It's been ongoing there. They actually were kind of an anomaly for a while. They were a bit of an exception because they were surrounded by 2 countries that were very war-torn, but they were able to keep social harmony for a long time. But unfortunately that has changed with the spreading violence. And you'll see here just unfortunate the number of people that needed shelter and essential items, estimated up to 1.5 million. So we're providing sleeping mats, tarps, soap and buckets and blankets to the individuals. There's our aid right there with the nonprofit help who we've partnered with. Ethiopia is one of the fastest growing displacement crises in the world and the 16th poorest country. And again, we're seeing a lot of aid needed there. We're working with a UN agency called IOM, and we're supporting 12,000 of the most vulnerable displaced families in Ethiopia. Cameroon, which is impacted by the ongoing Chad Basin, the Lake Chad Basin crisis with multiple causes of displacement and shelter need. And we've served over 9,800 families in this area with things like ground sheets, mosquito nets, hygiene kits, solar lights, trying to improve the overall physical and emotional well-being for these families. Nigeria is another country that's been in the war-torn area since 2009. And we've been involved since 2018. Again, reaching out to our local partners, the ACT group, we're helping displaced families with shelters and other household items. Mozambique faces diverse challenges that have created a complex humanitarian crisis for the country and under-resourced and under-equipped to respond. It's one of the most unequal countries in the sub-Saharan Africa, which combined with extremely high levels of poverty and high levels of social tension. The need for shelter and non-food items assistance has grown exponentially, and they are in dire needs. The number of people uprooted from their homes is almost 1 million. And it's crazy to think that 1 million people are uprooted from their homes, and Shelter Boxes is providing aid to only 6,000, but you have to remember we're going to those that are the most vulnerable and on the outlying areas. So we're not focusing in on the big, large urban areas. We're really looking on the outlying areas. A lot of people that receive our aid are maybe multi-generational homes or a single mother, or maybe they have someone disabled in their family, so really the most vulnerable group. Syria is where, as I mentioned before, we have been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize with the work we've done there. They also experienced, aside from the civil war, they experienced devastating flooding in 2022. And in 2022, in March, we supported 346 families impacted by the flooding, and we're working on winterized distribution, supporting another 4,000 families on their conflict to Syria. And I know our year in review is a little heavy because a lot of it is war-torn countries, but what I appreciate about Shelter Box is that we found that what we were doing in natural disasters allowed us to pivot and help these people in need. And I think that really sings to what Rotary is all about, is that service above self and helping those that are in most need. So I appreciate the work that you guys are doing in Sitka and all of the fundraising you're doing and keeping Shelter Box in your budget year after year. And I'm happy to take any questions, but as an ambassador representing Shelter Box for District 5010, I really just want to say thank you for being the rock star in District 5010 and the only silver hero member that we have. So thank you again. Stop share here. Is there any questions at all?
Jess? Dan Jones?
Yes.
I always pick out the little details. Going back about 3 or 4 slides, I think it might have been in Mozambique, you provided Bama shelters, which I assume weren't the tents. What's the difference? What are they? Why did you use those?
The Bama shelters, because that is actually something that we partnered with another organization in that country, and sometimes we can receive or we can give out aid faster when it's something that country has on hand. So Turkey is a great example right now of what we're doing is we're having a really hard time getting our aid into Turkey, and that's a local politics thing. So there's actually a distributor that's helping make aid in Turkey, and that's what a lot of NGOs are giving out right now for aid. And that's same thing for Mozambique. Cynthia, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I'm curious how we became the silver. Like, what did we do to get the silver award or whatever?
Well, you gave a donation of over $3,000. Now, I don't know how your club went about that. If you guys did a fundraiser or...
No, that's what I meant. Like,
okay.
what qualifies it? I know how we did it.
Okay, yep, it's over $3,000. So the Hero Club has 3 levels. 1,000 is bronze, and that's what most of the clubs in District 5010 are. Then it goes 3,000 for silver, and then gold is 5,000.
Okay, thank you.
like I said, a lot of clubs relied on their youth exchange to do fundraising, and that was kind of what we've done in the past. But, you know, I'm really encouraging clubs. I was at Pets this year with Sharon, and just really encouraging them to earmark money to Shelter Box in their budget. It doesn't have to be 1,000, it can be 500 or whatever else that they can afford. But if not, I've had clubs be like, we don't have room in our budget, what can we do? Sometimes they give Happy Bucks for a month, and they restrict their Happy Bucks to Shelter Box, or they do a dessert auction, or something just that works for their club. So, Carrie, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I saw how the seamstress had repurposed her materials after the disaster was sort of over. Do you see sort of like a local economy starting because they have the materials, and does any of the stuff just sometimes go into the landfill?
Great question. Once they receive aid, it is theirs to do with what they please. So yes, she made hers into her sewing room. We've had some people make them into their bee huts. They've got bees in them. I've heard that one turned their Shelter Box tent into a VRBO on the beach. And a lot of times what happens with them is they usually get cut up when they're done, and they're repurposed for other materials. Very rarely am I hearing things go into a dump. I think a lot of times we're deploying in third world countries where they're very resourceful and reuse their materials over and over. And so sometimes they would cut them up, or they, if they need to sell, they can sell them. That, you know, they own that, and we really reiterate that this is yours. We are giving this to you. You own this. The government cannot take it away from you. So if you want, if your home is rebuilt and you want to cut it up or sell it or do whatever, you can.
And I'm going to throw in another quick question. You have a dream of being an actual person on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have steps to go through, or is it just you're waiting for the right time for yourself?
A little bit of both, yeah, good question. So there is basically kind of a stick your toe in the water and see if you like it. They do a mock deployment twice a year through Shelter Box. So if any of you are interested, or if you know of people that would be interested, they do 2 mock deployments. One's down in Oregon in September, and then in 2024, it's going to be back in Texas. And you're there with current response team members and other individuals that are showing interest in becoming one, and they do a mock deployment. So they see how you act under pressure. They see if you can be a leader and a follower. I think you have to stay up for over 48 hours straight, because a lot of times when we deploy, that's a big thing, that these people aren't getting a ton of sleep. You're sleeping outside, sometimes not in a Shelter Box, sometimes just on the ground, because that's, again, the situation. They're making this a mock deployment. If I feel like, and they'll give very honest feedback and constructive criticism of like, yes, you should apply further, then you have to go through a interview with the Shelter Box team, and if you pass that, you go to UK Cornwall, and you do a mock deployment over there for 6 days with other response team members. That's all out of pocket. And then if you get chosen to be a response team member, then Shelter Box pays for every deployment you go on. And you basically have to have, your commitment has to be that you are able to give up 6 weeks of your time. You get to choose whatever months you want. So if I'm like, okay, I can give 3 months in January, or 3 weeks in January, and 3 weeks in October. Did I say 6? It's 6 weeks, not months. Then you have a bookie bag ready to go. And maybe you won't ever get called to deploy because there isn't a natural disaster happening and they don't need people to do follow-ups. Or you might get deployed 4 times during your 6 weeks. It's depending. And some people, depending again on their professional, on what they do for a living and their flexibility, they'll say, I'm ready to deploy year-round, and they can go. So I've had some friends that have deployed multiple times and some that have been yet to deploy, just based on their availability.
Carl,
for me, I have to wait until I have a little bit more flexibility in my career to give up 6 weeks at a time to go. Yeah. Gentleman in the pink shirt in the back.
The fellow president, when Michelle was here in Sitka, Carl
Oh.
Stillman,
Yes, you organized the conference, yes, nice to see you.
I wouldn't say I organized it, I'll just say I was a clog in the wheel that, with the committee that did organize it.
Well, you did a great job.
So I have two questions. One is, how many shelter boxes do you guys have in reserve worldwide to be deployed, roughly? I don't. And the other one is, who transports them? Does the government, private cargo planes? How do you get them deployed?
So we'll take your last question first. Any way we can. And typically we try to get the most cost effective and who's gonna get it there the fastest. Sometimes it's private, sometimes it's government, sometimes it's military, sometimes it's cargo. So it just depends on how we can get it there, and it depends on what country we're going to as well. You know, there's a lot of factors that rely into that, so it's a little bit of everything. In terms of kits available, hard question to answer just because that's all based on our donations that we get. You know, when we had that slide of the decision to deploy, do we have aid to actually deploy with? You know, that's sometimes part of the issue is that we don't have aid to deploy with. So I always tell people, you know, you're not funding the natural disaster that hit today, you're funding the future disasters. So we have things on deck ready to deploy. I don't have a number of what's currently out at our distribution centers right now for you, but I know that obviously with generous donations like you guys, that allows us to continue to have that aid out there. And as I mentioned previously, Ukraine was the only disaster where people could earmark where they wanted their money to go to that. Go ahead, the gal there in the tan jacket, I can't really see.
Oh, yeah, hi. Have you done the mock deployments?
I have not. My goal is to do it in 2024 in Texas. So
Yeah.
they were on hiatus during COVID, obviously, and last September was the first time they did it. And it's kind of out by Walla Walla, I believe, is where they do the one in Oregon. And then it's at a private ranch in Texas that they go. And the gentleman that owns the ranch is also a response. I think he's a retired response team member. And to become a response team member, there is some, like you have to be able to lift 125 pounds, swim in the ocean. There are some physical things that you have to do as well. I think somebody else in the room had their hand up. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, John.
Hi, John.
How about these are manufactured or assembled in Cornwall, is that correct? And what's the production capacity? I mean, are they continually building these shelter box kits, or do they just build them on demand?
No, they continue to build them, and that is a lot of people are like, that's where I want to go. I want to volunteer and put shelter box kits. They do allow people to help do that. You have to get to Cornwall, but they do allow volunteers to help assemble the kits, and sometimes you'll see if you are an individual donor to shelter box, they'll do a plea of like our stash is low, help us out kind of thing. So but yeah, they do continue production. Sometimes it just matters on how much or if we are in desperate need of it. Carrie, you had another question? Oh, you're muted, huh?
Yeah. Has any group ever raffled off a shelter box to raise money?
Well, the problem is as response team member or as ambassadors, I had to like beg, plead, and steal to get a tent. And I have kind of a tent that was stored in Oklahoma, so it has some damage to it. So you can't really purchase a shelter box tent. I did at a fundraiser that I did in Anchorage, I was able to buy the Luminades, and I auctioned those off at like this champagne and oyster event I hosted as a fundraiser, and people bought those for $100, but they don't really allow the shelter boxes to be auctioned off. And like I said, I'm a lucky ambassador. There's about 400 ambassadors across the US and only 42 response team members across the US. And I'm one of the lucky ones that has one, and it was really because Nancy Dodge had one as well. So I kind of took hers and took all the materials she had as well. Yeah, Jeff.
I got a question. So I think when Carl was the president, we did have a shelter box tent, and it took about 8 of us, about 5 hours to put it up. Is it easier to put them up now or not?
No, it's not. And honestly, if I didn't have my husband putting it up with me, I would not be able to put it up either. I have to take that back. I was at the Homer Health Fair last year, and I don't know how many of you know Boyd. He's the youth exchange officer down in Homer. He and I put it up with the help of Bibo, their exchange student from Tunisia, and that was a laughable matter. It was, I got YouTube out and I was like, we're watching YouTube doing it step by step. So my husband's very efficient at putting it up, so I usually make him attend events with me when I need to get up, but he was probably hunting that day, so he wasn't available. But it is a large tent. I can say in 2020, I slept in our shelter box tent, myself and Nancy Dodge, and then 6 exchange students slept at the Iditarod Restart out at the Erickson's house. They're members of the Sitka Rotary Club. And that night it snowed 24 inches on us, and it was about 40 degrees in the tent. And most of the students were from around the equator, so this was pretty life-changing for them. And again, this was days before the world shut down with the pandemic. So we had a cozy little night in there, but we were able to give our information back to the company that makes them and be like, hey, I know you don't really deploy a lot to snowy areas, but our dome did sink in because of the amount of snow we got. Nancy sent that information back because all of our tents are part of an L&D project. And so we get them at cost when they come to us, but our job is to report back on things that could improve, so.
Thank you.
Yeah. I know we're at 1 o'clock and I don't want to take anybody's time over, but I really appreciate the time today, and what a great way to present in this Zoom world. So thank you again, and good to see all your faces, and hopefully I see you in Kodiak.
Great, thank you so much, Jeff. All right, do we have any other announcements before we head out? Okay, I am not sure who the speaker is next week. Do you know, Perry?
I don't know.
Okay, I believe it is on the website though, because I put it on there. So if anyone is interested, please look at that, and I will of course send that out again next week.
ATF, is it ATF? It's the federal guy for
Oh,
your-
ATF?
ATF, I think it is.
Yeah, okay, so it's the ATF representative. Anyway, so hope to see you guys then. You guys have a good week, and don't forget, if you want to attend the board meeting, it is Monday at 5:30 via the same Zoom link that we use for our lunches. Thank you, guys.
You're watching Sitka Community TV. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like what you see.